welcome to another episode of Beyond the Frets. I am extremely pleased to present Jaak Sooäär. As you're going to find out in their interview, he was visiting Capital University, which is where I teach in Columbus, Ohio. He was coming all the way from Estonia. You're going to hear all about that. But before I get into the interview, I just want you to hopefully share, like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever you need to do to get Beyond the Frets out there into the public, in people's ear holes. I hope you enjoyed my last episode with Abigail Comst, and I know you're going to love this episode with Mr. Jaak Sooäär. So please sit down, grab an axe, and get abducted. This is Beyond the Frets. Jaak Sooäär, welcome to Beyond the Frets. I am very pleased to have Jaak. He's a guitarist from Estonia, and he's visiting Capital University where I teach. He's been here the past week playing and hanging and teaching and kind of collaborating between our two institutions that we hope to make an exchange program. So Jaak, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting. It has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. So Jaak, I mean, I know we've kind of gotten to know each other a bit the past few days, but if you wouldn't mind telling the audience like a brief overview of who you are and where you come from and how you came to be one of Europe's preeminent jazz guitarists and educators.
Yes, my name is Jaak Sooäär. I come from Tallinn, Estonia, and my first instrument was accordion. I studied accordion, and around when I was 13, I started to play guitar. I always wanted to play guitar, but it was Soviet Union back then, and guitar was not so happening, and it was difficult to get an electric guitar. And so I played guitar, and I studied in Copenhagen at the Rhythmic Music Conservatory, which is a big and nice school in Denmark. And after that, went back to Estonia, and here I am. I have been playing. I think I should call myself jazz guitar player, but I play a lot of all kinds of music, and a lot of folk music, and a lot of classical music, and some rock music, and some avant-garde music, but I think it's all part of jazz. I think in the word jazz has different meaning for different people, but I think for me and for many people in my country, jazz is a very wide term.
That's the way it should be. We don't always have that in America, but I think here in Columbus, at least, it's a very wide definition of jazz. Because at this point, I mean, it could be anything from, Charlie Parker to Ornette Coleman to John Zorn to, you fill in the blanks. It's everything at this point.
Yes, some people like to call it improvised music, and I'm also okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Music is music. I do what I like to do, but I think the jazz mindset has given me good platform to go different directions and to play with different musicians. So I think it gives flexibility. So if I play with folk musicians, I might play like they want me to play in a way, and with classical musicians, I have to figure out how to play the way they want music to be played, and with rock musicians, same thing. So, but I like it. I think to play one thing the whole life would be boring. But I have been playing for decades now, and I still see so many so much music, but I want to play, and so many musicians I want to play with, and which is new for me. So I feel as a student pretty much all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the skills of being a jazz musician, you're able to transfer to any genre and style and be flexible.
In a way, yes, and I think it's just you must have the basics on your instrument, so you can go different ways.
So how did you come to find jazz? Because I know during the course of the week you've mentioned that behind the Iron Curtain, it was a little difficult to find American jazz recordings at all. So how did you come to find this music?
Yes, the whole story of jazz on the other side of Iron Curtain is quite exotic for people on this side, because after the Second World War, where U.S. and Soviet Union were on the same side, I think American movies were shown in Soviet Union. But at the end of 40s, the climate became very bad, in between those countries, and Cold War started, and everything which came from West or America was considered very bad and wrong, and jazz was, of course, one. I mean, this is an American music, and at that time it was clearly American music. So it was almost banned. Not really, maybe, but I know in Soviet Union people have been put to jail for playing jazz.
Really?
But not in Estonia.
Okay.
But I know that in 50s there were enthusiasts who wanted to play jazz, and they had to do it hidden. They had those secret rehearsals and secret concerts to each other, and
wow.
Yes, and then in 60s it became a bit easier, because it was this time when Soviet Union opened up a bit, and there were jazz festivals in Tallinn, which became international, and they were big events in Soviet Union. Soviet Union was a big country. I don't know, 250 million people. It's a big country, and it was one of the main jazz events in Soviet Union. So musicians all over the country and the audience came to Tallinn, and we had musicians, I think, from Scandinavia first, and from the friendly East European socialist countries. And in the famous story is about Tallinn Jazz Festival in 1967, when Charles Lloyd Quartet visited Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland, over the Gulf of Helsinki, on the other side of sea, 80 kilometers, which is, how many miles is that? 50 miles.
Yeah.
And they wanted to come to play in Soviet Union, and they did get tourist visas, but they didn't get working permits, because the authorities were afraid, American music, riots, something.
Yeah.
And they arrived to Tallinn, and the festival started, and the festival was huge, in a big sports place, thousands of people, and they didn't play. I think it started on Thursday or something.
Wow.
And Willis Conover was there, for example, from Voice of America, and it was really well covered, and a very, very big event at that time. And the quartet was, Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette and Ron McClure.
Wow.
And so we played basketball with locals on the street, and we're hanging out. And then I think they didn't play also on Friday and on Saturday. And then I think there was an article in New York Times on Saturday, probably. I think it was said that blacks were not allowed to play in Soviet Union or something like that. I'm sorry, maybe this is not exactly what was written, but anyway, it was mentioned in the main one of the main newspapers of U.S. And Sunday morning there came a phone call from Moscow, from the headquarters. They must play.
Wow.
And
Because there was pressure at that point.
Yeah, because it was political. It became political, and Moscow was like the. I mean, if Moscow told you something, then we had to do it.
Right.
And so we played, but and they were told to play 20 minutes, but George Savakian, who was the manager and was together with them, he sensed a good story, and he said play 40. Mm-hmm. And he knew it was going to be recorded, and we played. I think we played in one row, 40 minutes, and then it was 20 minutes standing ovations, and we couldn't play any encore because the drums were taken away immediately when we stopped.
Wow!
So we played. It was wonderful, and everybody was just super happy. And George Savakian bought the rights for the recording from the Estonian radio, and we went also to Leningrad and Moscow, two big cities of Soviet Union, of Russia, and we were not allowed to play concerts, but we jammed with local musicians.
Huh. Okay.
And then we left. We went home to US, and it was released.
Wow.
Charles Lloyd in the Soviet Union, and. With it's a very, very nice cover with kind of this red with Soviet thing, but also actually Estonian national colors, blue, black, and white, which were forbidden. It was banned. If you used this combination in Estonia that time, you were sent to jail. Wow. And the photo of the quartet being on the Red Square in Moscow. So it was cool, But in Tallinn, the festival was banned because the local Communist Party thought it was too many problems, and the people who organized the festival, they also had problems, and some people were fired, and so the festival stopped. So I'm telling this to give you kind of background of Soviet Union, and then.
Well, so can I say something?
Yes.
Is it? Were they against? Was it mostly that it was an American music, and if it was infiltrated in the Soviet Union, that could be used to foment riots or westernized propaganda, or were they actually against the music itself as well as a concept? Jazz.
I think it's about propaganda. I mean, the whole idea, everything what came from West or from America was bad, and for example, I can give you another example. All the programs what the musicians played, they had to be accepted before. You had to give your program to the censor, and when they checked what you play, and when they said, okay, we accept, And there were those percentages. Maybe 75% of the music had to be Soviet offers, and then maybe 10% from friendly countries, and then maybe 10% from other countries, and then what was done? They of course with censors, they didn't know anything about music, so we played like, I don't know, Stella by Starlight by Ivanov, or they just like they made it like
made up the composers.
They made up the composers to be able to play this stuff.
Wow.
So this was the climate, and I was a teenager in the 80s, and when things started to change, so it started to open up, and another exotic side of Soviet music life was that of course there were no Western LPs or albums available, and then if somebody, many Estonians went to West at the end of the war. We were escaping from the Soviets, and many stayed in Sweden, and many in Canada. We had a very big Estonian, big number of Estonians in Toronto, for example, but also in States and in Australia, and everywhere else also. So they sometimes sent albums to maybe you wanted a new Led Zeppelin album or something, So it came, albums were there, and also some jazz albums. And I know one guitar player in Estonia in the 70s. His relatives sent him a guitar player, his magazine. They subscribed him. So he got it maybe a few months later, but this information somehow came to somebody. So I think the whole country was reading this one magazine, because
Right.
it was the only one, in Estonia.
Wow.
But the LPs were, it was really a hard currency. And an LP, Western LP cost maybe 50 rubles, and the average monthly salary was 120. So it was
Wow.
it was very expensive. And those people, they met, who had LPs and had an interest in music, they met in one place in a park close to Old Town in Tallinn every Sunday morning, and when everybody had LPs with them, and when people were looking what you have and what do you have, and when they exchanged for a week, and then you recorded it at home on a tape, and then you gave it back, exchanged back next week. So this is how Western music was spread. And I have a older brother who played drums and was interested more in rock music, and he also had a few albums, and somehow he got some jazz rock from somebody, and I listened to everybody what he listened, and this jazz rock sounded good for me. So I was into blues, and I was listening to Eric Clapton and this kind of stuff at that time. And then I started I became interested in jazz rock, and so little by little I moved towards jazz. And then at the end of the 80s already, it became a bit more open. But what was good in Tallinn, where I live, is that we could always see Finnish TV. It was illegal, but and we had those special built-in things in the TV, so we could see. We could get the signal.
Converters or something.
Yes, converters, and so Finnish TV showed a lot of jazz actually, and they have a very good jazz festival, Pori Jazz Festival, which had big acts, and they had at that time many concerts were broadcasted. So this is where the information came.
Wow.
So that's basically my childhood background.
When you mean jazz rock, who are you listening to exactly?
I think the first one was actually Yellow Jackets with Robin Ford, and this is where it started. And Robin Ford was maybe the first jazz rock guitar player I was listening to.
Yeah.
And then came Schofield,
right?
His funk records from '80s, and Mike Stern '80s records, and Chaco, and a little bit later Pat Metheny, and then Bill Frisell. So little by little, learning what was happening in the West.
Yeah. And when did you decide you wanted to be a professional musician? And how is that? Is that a normal path in Estonia? Like, what's the kind of usual path or trajectory if you want to be a professional musician in Estonia? Is that rare or no?
Estonia is music is important in Estonia and has been important. And for example, in Soviet times, it was even more important because it was a kind of little bit political also, like resistance thing. Because we held big singing festivals every fifth year, where about 30,000 singers sing in a choir, and which is great, really nice feeling. Like, I think for you it's like a football game at maximum, this thing that you feel this energy in the air, and singing. We have this folk singing tradition which is very strong, and also classical tradition which is connected to Russian tradition, and before the Soviet time, many Estonians studied in St. Petersburg Conservatory, which was probably one of the best schools in Europe at that time for classical music. So the music tradition has been strong, and I also I sang in a choir since I was 6, in a boys' choir, and traveled a lot in the Soviet Union while I was a kid, and studied in a music school, studied accordion, and got quite, I think, solid theory background and some piano, and so it was. I think it was normal, and we still. I mean, we had this very, I think, relatively high level network of music schools for children.
Okay.
Which we actually still do nowadays. It's a bit different, but yeah, the access for studying an instrument was very easy, and it was relatively cheap, I think, also, because there had to be something for the kids to do, and I think to study an instrument was a very regular way, to spend time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was normal, yes. But then the time started to change at the end of the 80s, and I was playing my jazz, and we did a blues band at school, and we didn't have a higher education for jazz or pop or rock. So and we had this music high school, which had also jazz. I think it's established 1979. And it only could be established because there was one also in Moscow at the time. I know it was politically very hard, but there is actually a very good jazz department in Moscow still going on.
Okay.
Which is more like a hard bop school.
Okay.
Still now. As in Soviet Union, you could skip Soviet Army when you were in university. I went to study economy because there was no possibility for me to study music. And the Soviet Army could be a really a hardcore thing because we were the, how to say, outsiders, a little bit like everybody knew we are against. So it was, and you could easily be sent somewhere very remote place, thousands of miles, and you were the only one, and everybody else was completely from a different culture. So it was nobody really wanted to go there.
Yeah.
So I studied economy and practiced a lot, and then I played my first jazz gigs, and I started to organize a jazz festival, and so later I went to Copenhagen, and so it has been quite natural for me.
And with your first jazz experiences on guitar, were you studying with anyone, or did you just lift things from records?
I actually studied. Estonia has been a country of guitar players in many ways, and we had a guitar player whose name is Tiit Paulus, who was kind of Jim Hall of Soviet Union, or some kind of like a melodic, very nice jazz player. He's now 77, maybe. Lives on an island in Estonia, and he's still with us. Just he doesn't play anymore, but I think he somehow maybe brought this guitar culture, jazz guitar culture, to Estonia, and the guitarist and the guitar teacher Mart Soo, who is about 10 years older than me. He was teaching in this music high school, and he was playing with my brother, and I asked him for a lesson, and he did actually 3 lessons with me at his home on Saturday, and each lesson was maybe 3 hours, and we met after half a year, and he gave me a lot of homework, all the basics, and I actually did the homework.
Yeah.
And he was like, he said, "Oh wow," So I think those 3 lessons, this is my basic or my main education actually, because I think he showed me the right things.
Yeah.
On guitar.
And you were motivated.
And I was motivated, yes.
Yeah.
And later I studied with him in the music school also, but actually when I had all the basics with him.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
So Then you went to Copenhagen and you got a degree there for music.
Yes.
Okay. Why Denmark?
This is a long story. I mean, now I'm telling very long stories.
It's okay.
Sorry, but when the festival in Tallinn was banned in 1967, it was quiet for a long time, and at the beginning of 80s, the conservatory students managed to start student jazz festival.
Okay.
And somehow it was allowed because youth and blah blah blah, and which actually grew a big festival pretty fast because there were so few festivals in Soviet Union at that time. And in the 90s things changed, and it was economy-wise very hard, and the whole life was quite wild. The old rules didn't.
Right.
I mean, were over, but the new rules were still not established, so it was a bit.
Were you completely separated from Russia economically? So you were self-contained.
Yeah, so everything changed very fast, and people didn't have money, and it was hard. And the student festival also started kind of from the top, or became smaller, and was focused more on young musicians. And a friend of mine organized it, and I started to help him, and started actually to organize myself.
Wow!
But at that time, the schools in Scandinavia, and this all was like moon. We were looking like, wow, somewhere far away and high, and we managed to get a band from Sweden to the festival, and then my friend and drummer of my band, he asked how about study possibilities in Sweden, and when we proposed him to go to Sweden and try to get in to a school, and he got in, which we were all very surprised. And then a Danish group came over, and we were jamming in Tallinn with them, and they said that you should apply, and then I applied and I got in, which was also a bit surprising. So we were the first ones who actually had a jazz degree, or higher education in jazz.
Yeah.
And we went back, and actually we as the main teachers of the jazz faculty in the music academy still.
Oh wow, wow, that's amazing. So you and what does your colleague and friend play?
He's a drummer. Tanel Ruben, yes.
Okay.
And then after us, the saxophone player came to Copenhagen, and he's also teaching. And he studied in Peabody here with Harry Thomas. Also did a graduate thing. But that was a bit later, when already things changed and there was more possibilities. But the first half of 90s was quite rough in many ways.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And that's when you left, or when were you in Denmark?
I left a little bit later, 96.
Okay.
When already things became a little bit better.
Gotcha. And so after Denmark, you went back to Tallinn, and
yes, Denmark was very nice, and I had a great band called the Dynamite Vikings, which we still play sometimes, and it was good. And I started to play with German musicians in Germany, and this networking was a good place for networking. And but I wanted to go back because Estonia is a nice place, and it was home, and I went back, and then the music academy proposed also to start teaching there, and then establish a jazz department, and things started to happen. And then we organized, we started the Estonian Jazz Union, which is like like an organization to promote Estonian jazz in Estonia and abroad also. And those organizations are quite well established in Scandinavia, so I learned from Denmark some things, and this went very well. We didn't have a regular jazz club in Tallinn at that time, and then we found a place which we thought looks good, or it doesn't look embarrassing if there are 30 people in the audience.
Yeah.
For the opening jam, there came 300. which was like, we were like, okay, and then the concerts were packed for years. Somehow there was hunger or need for this. And the other cities wanted it too. And I was organizing everything alone almost. So it was like 130 concerts per year I was organizing for some years. And then, I got some other people to work also, and I'm still a member of the board, but not doing daily things there. And so this organization is going to be 20 also next year.
Wow!
So it has been very beneficial for the organizing the jazz environment in Estonia, and also many activities abroad in Europe.
Is that tied with the country? Is it a non-profit? Or?
Yes, it's a non-profit.
Okay.
And as we did so well, somehow it's also, it's government supported many actions nowadays, because we could go to this field which was before maybe only classical, but they accepted us, and so it has been quite nice.
So, and maybe discuss a little bit, actually, how long is a higher education degree in Europe or Estonia? Is it 4 years like here, or what's the system like?
The system is nowadays, I think it's quite mostly the same all over the Europe. It's 3 years bachelor and 2 years master.
Okay.
So it's 3 + 2.
Okay.
And doctorate. Estonia, in our school you can do doctorate, and we have the first jazz doctorate from our school graduated last year.
Wow.
Yes, a very nice pianist.
Okay.
Kirke Karja, who is actually making a really nice career in Europe nowadays also.
How long is the doctoral program?
That's a good question. I think I'm not sure they all do it so fast, but I think maybe it's 2 years or 3 years or something.
Okay.
So sometimes they stay longer.
Yeah, right.
I never did it, so I'm not so familiar with that.
Okay. So how would you describe the culture at the Estonian Academy of Music as far as the jazz program? I already know how open you are as far as your definition of jazz, but how many faculty are there? What are the ensembles and the courses like?
The idea from the beginning was that there should be a lot of ensemble playing, and also we have quite a lot of theory because I think jazz musicians must have good ears. You should understand what you hear, or you should recognize what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 2 years of jazz history also, and quite a lot of history courses, because due to Soviet Union, there still, I think, is lack or gaps in the jazz history. And I think now newer generations, they have a little bit different problems also with history knowledge. There's so much information, and it's hard to really absorb or to concentrate on something. So there's everything coming, and if you listen from internet, you often don't know what you listen to. So I think listening, back back to our, I don't know, teenager years. You had some tapes, and when you went to your grandparents for summer, and then you came back, you had those tapes had cassettes had holes, in tape maybe, and you knew all the solos by heart. So if I hear those records which I listened back then, some Pat Metheny or Schofield, I mean I know basically I can whistle along all the solos. So this is important. I think you have to listen to music at least 10 times. I think also here I have heard in some universities that in America that you get homework, like you have to listen every day, I don't know, 3 songs every week, but you have to listen at least 7 times. That's your homework, because otherwise you just listen once and then you listen next thing and next thing and next thing and next thing, but you actually don't know what you listen to. So if you want to learn something, you have to listen to it maybe 100 times.
Yeah, I think students, speaking as myself too, we can forget that music can be a passive or active activity, and so often it's very passive. You listen to music in the car, you listen to music while you're doing your dishes, it's just on in the background. But if you really want to dive into something, you have to put on some headphones or some nice speakers and listen on repeat and repeat and repeat, and also train your ears to listen to different instruments on the recording. Because for me, if I listen to music, I hear harmony and I hear guitar. I don't hear vocals or words, and I don't hear some other things. So I have to actively put my ears in a space where I'm listening to the bass part or I'm listening to the lyrics. Otherwise, it's just my ears automatically go to the same place if it's passive. So for me, yeah, we've got to listen to it many, many times to absorb it all.
And then this coming back to a jazz department or the conception, I think the idea was to school musicians who will survive also internationally, which is not an easy task. And of course, it's up to the students themselves. They have to do the work, so you cannot school anybody, but you can give them possibilities. So we have, from the beginning, we have been very international, and we have made like numerous courses and workshops and masterclass and exchange projects, and also focusing on the students individually, because their interests might be very different and sometimes maybe even opposite, in music, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. So the first year they do standards, all of them, and some of them do more standards later, but some people go somewhere else.
Yeah,
and the main criteria is that they do it really well, what they do, so they can do what they want. And we have had some very nice hard pop players, and we have had some completely other players, and it's up to them. And I'm quite happy. We have really some people who are successful internationally and doing their own things and have their own ideas. So it has been actually good.
And listening to that approach, I very much admire that, and that's how I wish it could be here. But in America, like at our conservatory, it's so difficult to have a very individualized approach just because of the grading system and the way the curriculum works. So how do you do grading and curriculum, and like, do you do juries? Like, how do you test, quote unquote, test your students and pass them?
This is another very long topic, but no, I think everything is doable. The question is, what is the criteria?
Yeah, right.
So if you say, okay, you have to play Chinese steps in this speed, this amount of notes in second, and if you fail, you fail. That's one way of doing it, and of course, the more open the criteria gets, the more subjective it is. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think we have not been very hard grading students, because I think life will grade them anyway. So we have tried to be more supportive and and of course it's individual. Some people sometimes need more push, and some people don't need. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe for some students it has not been so good because we are kind of. We are not so hard. I'm not so hard. I mean, I tell the students what I think and what they should do, and I show them the things. But if they don't want to do all those things, that's also okay for me because they have to find their own path. And sometimes some people say later, "Yeah, man, I understood later that I still have to do those things," and that's okay. I mean,
they're young. It's only a brief time in their life.
So it's quite open.
I like that. That's what I want to bring. That's what I want to start more here. Yeah, so I admire that a lot.
But of course, the perspective, here is different from Estonia because we are, in a way, very remote land in the jazz, and also in Europe, it's on the edge somewhere far away, and the jazz market is not growing. So we are not very necessary. I mean, we came to a party when it was maybe already over. You know? So there is some kind of not stress, but it would be better if we were a little bit exotic, you know. So it's in this case it's good to do your own stuff, which is different. And to play mainstream jazz and go international, it's hard. We have some people who do it, and they are very, very good. And somebody is living in New York and really making it, and that's great. But I know it's a very, very hard work since early childhood. You know.
How do you define mainstream?
Let's say hard bop, you know.
Okay, more swinging.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if an Estonian hard bop band wants to get a job in Germany, then the festival would probably still hire Americans because it's more appropriate or kind of more authentic, which is logical. So if you come from Estonia, you should do something which is your thing. So to find your thing is crucial if you come from a small remote place.
Well, I guess segueing into that topic, you know, you've had this amazing career as an educator and also a promoter and organizer, but how have you been growing alongside as an artist, as a composer, as a band leader, and finding your voice on the guitar?
Yeah, there are so many interesting things in music, so I have just tried to do what I want, and I always actually did what I wanted, so I didn't really care so much what the others thought about it. So that's basically it, you know. and starting as a jazz like a fanatic, you know, in late teenager, and then in Denmark going also more experimental and meeting people like Jim Black, you know, so American people who came over in Denmark at that time. And then also a lot of folk music. I have been somehow we have this folk tradition and using folk music in my music, and then later years more classical music. A lot of Johann Sebastian Bach, and also playing a lot with saxophone player from Moscow, Russia, Alexei Krulov, and we have done some classical music albums with Russian classical music and jazz, which has been very, very educative for me also, because a lot of jazz, I would even say contemporary jazz harmony, comes from the 19th century, late 19th century classical music. So just to see how it works there and to improvise on those harmonies and those forms is challenging and very nice.
I wanted to ask about the Estonian folk tradition, because you've brought that up. How do you describe that music? What are there traditional folk instruments that are typically played?
Yeah, I think it has two different categories. The older layer is vocal music.
Okay.
So it's vocal music, which the nature it's quite simple. So and it has it's like a storytelling, endless storytelling, singing, simple melodies, and there is a fourth singer who sings something, and then the choir answers,
Okay.
repeats, and I think it, as we are quite in the north, when in winter the days are short and the nights are long and dark, so people were just singing for hours, and it brings you somewhere else. It takes you away. So it's in a way kind of trance, and this music can be interpreted in a modern context also, which is of course a bit dangerous. I mean, this is being done very much now, and you can put Western harmony, on this, and you can put the beat or whatever. And sometimes I think this frame, the new thing, it kills a little bit the original thing. But you can also make. I mean, there are many versions where the original stays fresh and the original message is somehow amplified. We have this choir composer Velja Tormis who by accident found this old folk song in the 60s. At that time, this old stuff was boring and it was in archives and nobody really did it. It was dying. But he somehow brought it up and started to do it, and he became one of the leading choir composers, I think we can say, in the world. 70s, 80s. I just knew a new book was published here in States in English about him.
Okay.
Last week, I think.
Oh, wow.
He's not with us anymore. But his music is really great. And we actually, he did kind of remix of the old stuff in a modern choir setup. And we did a remix of his remix in a modern jazz or modern contemporary setup with 2 singers and 2 guitar players, which was very, very, very successful. And we have played a lot in Europe. So it is very inspiring. And then there's also dance music played by instruments, and I think the main instrument used to be kannel, which is like a sitar. You play with fingers, many strings. That used to be, the old version is 6 strings, and also this I have played a duo and with a kannel player, guitar, and this it's a very kind of minimalistic. It's a quiet instrument, so you have to.
I see.
You have to go to this level, but very many nuances also, very nice music. And then there's, of course, accordion, and later bagpipe, And at the moment, I'm also interested in this stuff again, and how to play it to put it on electric guitar, and it might be some polka or something, 2 chords, but I started to learn one tune, I think last fall, at the same time with a violin piece by Bach, and I think the Bach piece was easier to play than the polka. So it's actually, if you want to really play it on guitar properly and make it sound really great, so it's very challenging and very interesting for me.
And you've clearly taken inspiration from that folk tradition and brought it into some sort of jazz improvised context.
Yes, and I always liked this improvising part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a tradition of improvisation in the Estonian folk music, or not really?
Yes, I think also this old folk singing was very much improvised, and the big singers, they were famous people who were singing. Of course, they had their own versions of songs for hours, maybe, telling stories. But they were just improvising. They were singing maybe about this microphone here or this bottle here, just to add it to the song.
Right. Because people needed some warmth during the cold nights.
Yes. So this improvisational part of it has always been there, and I think now also those wax roll recordings of instrumentalists, I think they are really variating those dance songs a lot. So if somebody says that something has to be played like that, or this guy played it like that, I mean, you would even maybe listen to the same recording 1 minute later, he's playing completely different. So it was. I think it has been very open.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of your long-standing bands and projects, and how we can find you on the internet and your upcoming projects, that kind of stuff.
Yes. No. At the moment, I'm mostly involved in a trio with an Armenian bass player, Ara Yaralyan, who lives in Tallinn, Estonia.
Okay.
With me, and who actually lived in Boston for a while, but moved back to Estonia. And a Finnish drummer, Markku Haunaskari, who is maybe the most well-known member of the trio. He's on many ECM recordings, for example.
Okay.
Playing a lot with Norwegian musicians, for example. And this is, in a way, it's like a piano trio without a piano, or this is how I think about it. That the guitar has to cover the wide range of frequencies.
Yeah.
And it's not really guitar trio in a jazz rock way, or it's not a guitar trio in a traditional jazz standard way. And we just released a new album a month ago, and we got a review in Germany which said that the style of the trio is a non-cliché guitar jazz. So we thought this sounds good for us. This is the main thing now, and also another thing, I play a lot of Bach still. I play with classical piano player Ivo Sillamaa, who is really a monster piano player or harpsichord player, and very rhythmically very close to like a metal band rhythm section. I think they play those Bach polyphonic things. It's really very groovy, really, and it has to be actually very solid.
Yeah.
And he can do it, and I really love to play with him. And some folk music projects. Nowadays, everything is easy to find in streaming or in YouTube. Quite many videos up there also. So if you're interested, you can find. And I have a website, sooäär.com. So if you go there, there's a whole back catalog and discography and everything and links.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be sure to post all the links in the show notes, and everyone will know how awesome Jaak Sooäär is. Thank you so much for being on Beyond the Frets. So the day after this interview, we had a quartet gig, and I just had the most fun with Jaak. We really didn't prepare a whole lot because we were super busy, and we were calling tunes. And not only is he an incredible guitarist technically, but he just knows all the tunes. He knows the style, but he can go equally between bebop lines to rock and blues and avant-garde, and just super adventurous and very funny, which I love. We had just a blast going kind of nuts over some standard tunes, and really just enjoyed knowing him as a person and a player, and I look forward to hopefully many years of collaboration. Please check out his recorded music. There's a huge output of his own projects and his work as a sideman. He's all over the place. He's easy to find, so please check out Jaak. And of course, stay tuned for the next episode of Beyond the Frets. Until then, hope you have a great couple weeks.